Hey, everybody, welcome to the Player Engagement Podcast. Greg here, and this is just an intro to what you're about to listen to. Today, we're talking with James Zinn from Shockbyte. We're going to talk about multiplayer and the different types of servers that exist for it. We're going to talk about P2P versus dedicated servers. We're going to talk about POGs and why you should look into POGs. What's the benefit and how you can monetize it from both a player as well as a publisher or developer, and just networking in the industry and why it's important to go out there, reach out, and make your dreams come true. So, this is a great episode. James is a really fun person to talk with, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Player Engage podcast. Today, we are joined by James Zinn. He is the head of partnerships for Shockbyte, and he also has his own little studio he's working on called Blue Scarf Games. We're going to talk about all things server hosting, which is kind of beyond my knowledge, so I'm going to sound like a real newbie here for a little bit. But before we dive into it, James, thank you so much for being here today. Anything you want to say about yourself?
Just firstly, thank you so much for having me, Greg. It's been amazing talking to you, and everyone at Keywords is absolutely great. I'm James. I'm part of the Shockbyte team, and I've been working honestly in multiplayer and in gaming for probably about 2 years. And there is nothing like the gaming space, and everyone here is incredible, and I couldn't recommend it more than anything else. So.
Well, yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I'm really excited to have you here today. I am because, and again, honestly, I don't know a lot about server hosting. I've worked on servers in the past, but when it comes to video game hosting, it's way beyond my knowledge. And, we always see the ads out there for AWS or Azure, who's giving you tons of credits to come on here. And then when you and I were talking earlier, you were telling me about POGs, which is called player owned gaming services or servers. Services or servers, you can correct me there, but and that's all over my head, right? So kind of from a really high level start to the level set with me and whoever's listening, right? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so what we're going to be talking about today in general is we're going to be deep diving, I think, just into multiplayer in general. There is so much going on in the multiplayer space to talk about, and I think that a lot of us as gamers sort of kind of skim over that while we're playing. We're playing the game. We're connecting to the online servers, and we're having our match, and then that match lasts 20 minutes, 40 minutes, and then we leave the match, and it says you win or you lose, and then you kind of forget that there was people who ran that background. But there's a massive industry that allows that player interaction to actually happen in the background. And there's tons of background tech people that are way more knowledgeable than I am, and all of the coding involved on how to get that set up. But it's a really interesting space that I'd really like to dive into. So sort of kind of diving into where we fit into everything, and what I've been chatting about with you. So there is three different types of multiplayer in general. I mean, there's a lot more, but three different that we'll be talking about. We have offline, we have P2P, and then we have some form of dedicated. And P2P is very close to offline. Offline would mean that you're sitting on a couch with your buddies, you're playing Mario Kart, you're playing the good old couch multiplayer games. Some people, like Towerfall Ascension. Like I'm a huge fan of couch multiplayer. I have way too many of them. Some people may know P2P games. Those would be games that are like fighting games would be a great example. They're usually just one-on-one. And I've also been told a lot that the RTS genre is P2P primarily. They are asynchronous. They don't usually need to transfer a lot of information, or it's not between a lot of people. So those are P2P. And then the final area is called dedicated servers. And this is what all of us understand as being your Call of Duty, your League of Legends, your Minecraft, your Rust, your Valheim, anything that you're going to be connecting to is going to involve a server whatsoever. And that's what we've been talking about. It breaks down into a whole bunch of different areas where there is like actual dedicated servers, or there are player-owned servers. And when people are trying to build their own game, there's a lot to talk about on which direction to go. And there's a lot of headache involved, because there's a lot of prices and a lot of wondering like, how am I going to do this? So I think that there's a deep discussion to be had about what people should be worried about and what the industry should be thinking, should maybe be educated on more.
Okay, so this is making sense to me. All right, offline is our good old fashioned GoldenEye or Super Smash Brothers, where we're playing with our friends.
Yes.
P2P fighting RTS. I assume P2P is basically you guys are just connecting with each other. There's just not a whole group of people, so player to
Right.
player. And then you have dedicated servers, which I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I remember I feel like when Battlefield 3 came out, that's the first time I became aware, like, the game has to support custom servers, right? EA will put out their own servers for Battlefield, but you can choose to get your own server where then if you want to have your friends join, and it's like your private Battlefield where no one else is going to join you. Am I heading in the right direction there?
I would say that you're right, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about today, but not every company agrees.
Okay. And
And
now I want to start digging into that. Well,
yeah,
why wouldn't a company agree with that?
so I basically, and we can use Battlefield as a great example, because I am a huge fan of Battlefield. I've been playing Battlefield since Battlefield Bad Company 1. I am sorely addicted to that title. And they actually, not too long ago, shut down the Battlefield Bad Company servers, which made me cry. But there are fortunately still community servers running, so you can actually still play, because they made it an option for that game. But for more recent titles, such as the most recent Battlefield 1 and things like that, I'm not super aware, but I don't think that community servers are a thing anymore. Basically, what needs to happen during development is that the developers sort of give out their own code, their server development executables, to the community, and they say, well, we're really excited for you guys to make your own creations, but it also opens up a slew of potential issues and a lack of control for them as developers. And it also means that if people are playing on their community servers, people are not playing on their official servers, where they do have more control. They've got control over cosmetics. They've got control over player counts and rules and how gameplay is going to function, and things like that, and updates to the game, and the things like Rust would have more control over skins and things like that. Now, Rust actually also has community servers, so this is how they've chosen to do this as well. But depending on how much control a company would like over their servers, decides how they choose to go. League of Legends, as one example, very much wants every game to be very, very competitive, wants to play out exactly like they want it, and they want all of their skins to have the same value across every single match, which makes a lot of sense because people pay a lot of money, to have their skin full accounts. So they don't release their server code. There's no one's allowed to boot up their own matches. They're allowed to make custom matches, but that's within the confines of their own game. It's on their own servers. They still have control over the value of their skins.
Would it be safe to say most esports type of games wouldn't allow this to make it a fair playing field?
Um, some, it very much does depend on the game.
Mm-hmm.
Counter-Strike, I'd consider a pretty big esport game, but they also actually have custom servers.
Okay.
So those are modded to all the biggest heights, and you can make custom maps, you can make custom game modes. People import skins and play lots of cool stuff. There's tons of different options for CS:GO and CS2. So it really does depend on what kind of control that the developer is looking for.
And I have a feeling it's going to be the same answer here, but we're seeing a lot of games with user generated content, right? UGC is like the big thing this year, last year,
Big,
right?
yeah.
Is UGC typically, do you see it more often when you do have these developers that allow for custom servers? Like, is UGC higher in those games than the ones that are locked down?
Yeah, I think that honestly, it's been a great thing because UGC is so big that it it encourages people to have more ownership of the games. And we can start talking about this now as well if you'd like. But um, that UGC being imported into the game, when you make something unique for your game, say you made a skin or you made a map, um, people are excited to play on your map. That builds a community around your map, and you're excited because you made that map, and your piece of that game now exists in the game. So you kind of drive attention to the game because it's yours. So there's self-advertising for the game. That's good for you. That's good for the developer. And then same comes with custom servers, which is POGs, player-owned game servers. That self-advertises for the game because everyone wants to be involved in that new community you're building, and it's really a great thing. And we haven't even dived into the costs of actual server hosting yet, which there are a lot of. But UGC is absolutely massive when you're choosing this model. And usually, when someone is developing a game, they actually decide to go with UGC first and then realize, oh, wait, I actually should be choosing the POGs model instead because it allows them ownership of this section of multiplayer, which goes very well hand in hand with UGC.
Okay, I'm following so far. I'm not going to say I'm an expert yet, but maybe by the end of this, I'm going to be better. But
Yeah, I think
before
you're
we
getting it.
continue down this conversation, let's talk about James and how did you end up here on the partnership side for a server hosting company?
Yeah.
What?
So
Yeah.
I've been doing video game work for a long time. I think that the me and you have talked about this. We've been talking about this for a while. But I think the biggest thing about getting in the gaming industry is always just working it, like because you're passionate about it. I've been passionate about it since I was in um, college. Even when I was flunking all the classes required to actually do game development, I said I didn't care, and I made my own game anyway. No, I didn't end up releasing the game, but it showed me that it was what I wanted to do. And even if I wasn't going to be the one developing it, this is what my lifeline is. And I was working in gaming and devoting my time to gaming conventions and gaming companies, outside of it being even a paid opportunity, just because it's what I love to do. Um, and that sort of thing transformed into social media roles in gaming, and then into marketing roles in gaming. And then you start to meet people at higher steps in the gaming sphere, and then you land new roles in gaming, such as my role at Shockbyte, and it moved from there.
That's awesome. I think yeah, we had a very similar kind of college experience, right? Where we both didn't do well in our classes, and I kind of just said screw this. You kept going, so good for you. But we both ended up here, so here we are.
I
Um,
love it. I love it.
what was the first game you played that made you be like, this is what I want to do?
Well, no one's gonna know it, but I played this Star Wars tank game way, 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 way back when. Just when I was a little old kid in front of the television on an original Xbox, way back when, and I was immediately addicted. Um, and I can't even remember the name of it now. But I've that game immediately cemented in me that I was never going to get out of gaming. And since then, Fire Emblem has been a driving force for me, which is a JRPG, turn-based strategy game by Nintendo, and it runs, unfortunately, way too much of my life.
Hey, that's what happens when you start working here. Even before you're working here, it's addicting.
Right?
Um, so let's talk about cloud hosting versus player-owned gaming
Let's do it.
services, right? Like Amazon, Azure are huge. Why do I want to look elsewhere rather than using systems like that? And are they better at certain things than Pogs?
Yeah. So I ran a couple numbers because I've been looking into it a lot. Um, and for a developer, when you're making your game, as I even was, because besides Fire Emblem is maybe my only single player game that I play. Everything else I play besides that is all multiplayer. It's like Battlefield. I play League of Legends. I play RuneScape. Is my game that I can't get away from. It's all multiplayer games. So when you're a developer, as I am, and I'm making a multiplayer game, I'm looking at all my options, and you're looking at well, I want to make dedicated servers. And you're looking at these two people, and you're looking at what the price is going to look like. It usually comes in the form of like gigabytes per hour or something like that. And it's imagine something like 5 cents an hour, just as a guess. This isn't necessarily true. It's usually much more than this. But imagine around 5 cents an hour. Now, hopefully, you have 1,000 people playing. That would be lovely. It may not even be that many, and it may be more if your game does great. Like if you look at like Helldivers, you got 50,000 people, way more than that, maybe 100,000 people. Like depending on the game, like Spectre just released 20,000 people playing. Spectre Divide. It could be way more than that, but let's just say 1,000 because it's an easy number. So if it's 5 cents for 1,000 people to play for an hour, that's $50. That's not too bad. That's 1 hour. So throughout the day, some people will hop off, some people will hop on. So for 24 hours a day, just about, that's going to be $1,200 to you as a baby developer just trying to release your game. And then, you know, if you hope this keeps up because your game's doing great, that whole month is going to cost you $37,000. And that's just the start. And that's if you're doing okay with players, just at a consistent 1,000 all day long. And that's a lot of money for someone who just wants a match to last. For someone to hop into a match of League of Legends, it lasts 30 minutes. They win the game and then they hop off, and hope that that's going on all day long. It can cost a lot, even though it looks like a little when you're looking at what pricing looks like. And it really eats into, I suppose, your dream, your budget. So another option, if you are looking at UGC, and even if you're not looking at UGC, just like I talked about with CS2 and CSGO earlier, and even Battlefield, there's a lot of opportunity to go with player-owned game servers. And that's because when you relinquish a little bit of that control to your players by making the server executable, which you have to make anyway, because you need something to be able to run on AWS, Microsoft Azure, and all this stuff anyway. You have to make this essentially anyway so that you can run it on this. If you relinquish this executable to players and other companies, they can run it on their own, on whatever hardware they'd like, wherever they'd like around the world. And that's at zero cost to you, which means that not only do they have the control to run it how they want, where they want, which would optimize their experience for them. Because if someone, say, if I'm playing on an EU server in League of Legends, I'm going to be lagging. But if I have control of where I want to play, I'm going to make sure my League of Legends server is going to be here. So not only they're going to have control, but it's going to have costed you zero to run that server because I ran it, which is great. And a lot of companies actually successfully do this by making a server browser. I'm sure that anybody who's played a lot of games will recognize a server browser. You've got SCP, you've got Rust, Battlefield as a server browser as well. Very common thing. And it's super easy. You can even just sort by most popular games and people can hop in. Or you can just press play and it usually will just jump you into a game that's looking, or server that is looking for players, which is essentially just matchmaking, which you can do. It's something that we've really been pushing educationally because developers don't know that this is an option that they can turn to really lower costs on them. They think that, okay, well, if I can't afford $37,000 a month, I got to go P2P. And P2P can't handle their game of 12 players playing globally. That's a MOBA, like League of Legends. P2P can't handle that. So they do need to go dedicated, and they're like, well, heck, I don't know what to do now.
So I'm still a little lost, but I'm getting a lot of this. Who are you selling to? The players or the developers or both?
So I'm saying I'm trying to educate the developers.
Okay.
That they have an option that is good for them because there won't be any costs involved.
Right.
and it's good for their communities because it opens up UGC, it opens up a community self-advertising, and it opens up performance of their game for them. Because if they were trying to run it, it would be so costly to run it that I'd be worried about them trying to handle it.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if servers go down at League of Legends, right, for a day, it's not actually League of Legends' fault because they don't own the hardware, right? They're using AWS or Microsoft Azure or somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
But guess who gets blamed?
Right. Of course, it would be League of Legends.
Right. But if you gave out this dedicated server because you're a developer to everybody else, and then that person's server goes down, it's not on you because they know that person owns the server.
But do you think the player sentiment would be any different?
That's a good question. And it does vary.
Yeah.
That's a good question. But we do, because usually these networks, so that server network will usually be so self-advertised. They'll have their own website,
Yeah.
or even on the Discord, they'll have their own Discord at a minimum, and they'll be like, join us, play on our server. They'll be so self-owned. Usually they do know who to turn to say, hey, it's down, and it's not the developer.
Do you see the developers supporting the community by offering these, by enabling your users to do this? Like, are developers incentivizing players to go build a server?
I have seen it be done quite often. I think the most recent examples of this are Rust has done this now, Enshrouded did this, V-Rising has done this. They put buttons in their game, they do advertising on their socials, and they say like, hey, we've teamed up now with not only server hosts, but we're really looking to push a community aspect, and they have their community managers really push this hard, and say like, this game is looking to foster a community of servers, and we'd like you guys to really own a part of our game through this player-owned game functionality.
I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here, and if
Please.
you need me to stop, tell me to stop. But have you seen a place where players can start to monetize their server? Like, does it support, like, hey, Mountain Dew wants to advertise in my server, and maybe at the top of there's like a little thing or something like that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, that's actually a big thing. It's very funny because, honestly, very early on, and this is kind of going back a long time, but the way Shockbyte was sort of founded was actually by our CEO, who made his own Minecraft server when he was like 14, and it was literally with like $20, and he just grew it up that way, and it got so popular, and it was like a Call of Duty Zombies server, and it literally was like advertising in there. And it wasn't advertising other products like this, but that is something you could do. And the same thing happened with one of the other biggest Minecraft networks called Hypixel. They were looking to do basically in-game advertising, and it was going to be how they were going to make a ton of money. But the only reason that's sort of recently fallen off is because games have started to put in their EULA that you can't advertise other products within your game. But there isn't anyone saying that you can't push it outside of the game itself,
Yeah.
in your community once you've built it through the game.
I assume you see a lot of these communities built a Discord or something like that as well, where they're all communicating. So it's kind of like this whole ecosystem that's kind of being built.
What we actually see a lot as well is because this kind of loops back to developers needed to relinquish control a little bit. If you imagine GTA, there are tons of GTA servers. I imagine everyone has seen maybe GTA roleplay servers, things like that. If you join a GTA roleplay server and you wanted, that is a custom server that is owned by an individual. On their website, you could go and you could, with real money, maybe $5, $10, purchase an actual car in game. And that would be how they would fund not only the server costs but make money. So you, instead of buying skins through Riot Games, you're buying a car on the server through Greg.
And the game supports that? Is it just me transferring the car to that individual then?
Yeah, so there are a bunch within our giant multiplayer space. There are players who are companies who make websites to connect that purchase to the game's API and actually transfer it to the player.
Interesting. That's crazy. So there'd be a not an infinite amount of these things. There's just a finite amount because I may not always be able to get the silver pickup truck or whatever, right? Because eventually there's no more left.
They could do it like that if they wanted, but they also probably just want to make a lot of money, so they
Yeah,
don't
no, I
usually
get it.
limit it.
All right. So about halfway through the podcast, I would like to do the fireball round where I'm just going to throw some questions at you.
Let's do it.
Ready for it?
Yep, ready.
All right. You kind of answered this one, but not completely. What is your favorite single player experience?
I'm trying to look for a different one that isn't Fire Emblem. I've been playing Valkyria Chronicles again, which is World War II Fire Emblem.
Okay. Boom, there you go. So Fire Emblem. Do you remember, and do you want to share your first ever gamer tag?
I don't have a funny one. My first one was over Sir Million, but my brother's was funny because it was randomly generated on Xbox, and it was Hopeful Trash.
Nice. Love it. What is, and again, you may have answered this one, what is the first memory you have from gaming?
The first real memory I have from gaming was just sitting back and playing at my grandmother's house with one of my friends on my dinky little laptop playing Roblox.
Nice.
And it was just with one of my boys, and it's just nostalgic.
There you go. You, when James was in elementary school, what were you dreaming of doing when you grew up?
Definitely something gaming related. Every single day at elementary school, we would come in and we would start the computers, and then we would play video games on them. So something already gaming related.
And my last question, which people told me they don't like, but I'm going to continue to ask it, is what did you have for breakfast?
That's assuming I had breakfast.
That's assuming it's almost lunchtime.
I know, right? I'm going to have cereal.
There you go. For lunch or for breakfast?
Every meal.
Every meal.
Lucky
There you
Charms.
go. Lucky Charms. That's just what my son. You saw his video. That's what he had for breakfast too. You guys got something in common now.
You need to tell him. He's a great interviewer.
Thank you. He's gonna take my job one day. Hopefully sooner than later. There you go. You're off the hot seat. Thank you. Your journey to where you are today is fascinating, right? You went from wanting to be a developer in some ways, and you were in marketing, you're in partnerships. Where do you see yourself going, right? What's the dream? And obviously it's going to be a changing thing, but I'm curious kind of how you want to navigate this space.
Yeah, so I overall I find myself more and more just like you are, Greg. We've talked about this a bit. I think we're the talking kind of people. There's a bunch of different kind of people in this space that are all really great at different things. And I'm really not that great at development, as it turns out. But I do like to get people together and really accomplish cool things. That's where I find myself thriving and find myself having fun. So I want to be project manager on things. I want to be project organizer on things. And I want to be standing up on E3 with Greg right here. And then we're announcing this really cool thing that everybody's doing together. And that's where I see myself. I tell that on every job interview that I'm going to be up on E3, and that's with every company, and we're all going to be doing the cool stuff.
I love it. I love it. I feel that same sentiment, right? Just talk about it, share it. Like, it's such a great audience, right? And it's just fun to be working through that.
Yeah.
A lot of games are going multiplayer, obviously, especially with mobile, right? Mobile's pretty much strictly multiplayer. Not strictly, but pretty much, right?
Huge.
I mean, from a high level, do you have any best practices? Like you are building a game or you're working on a game, right? Like when you take a look at it and you're thinking about, do I want to add multiplayer to this game? How do you start it in the beginning so you build that foundation for it, even if you're not ready to implement it out of the gate?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic question. It really is a fantastic question because you need to think ahead on a lot of things. And what it really comes down to is being true to yourself and thinking, what do I need? Because while I may be a part of company, there's I even say this in my day-to-day work life. There is no reason that a company should be selling something to somebody who doesn't need it. And you need to be considering that just because everybody else is doing a thing, maybe we're talking about Pogs here, and maybe I sold you on Pogs. Um, if Pogs isn't what you need to be doing, if you're making an RTS, or maybe you're making a 1 to 3 player top-down story-based game, and P2P is better for you because it costs nothing to the developer, and there isn't a lot of data that's transferred over. If that's better for you, then that is genuinely what you need to be going for. But the development process on P2P is significantly different than a server executable um, for dedicated servers, because you need to actually develop what a mirror is going to look like for everyone else's data transferring through. It's a little bit technical, and unfortunately, I've been through the process of developing a little bit of P2P, hated it, never want to do it again, and I'm glad that I won't be. But um, I do know what it's like, and it is much different than creating that server executable. So thinking ahead on what your game looks like and what it really needs for the player experience comes first, and then you decide how you're going to build from there.
So take a look at the full scope, kind of the dream,
Yeah.
and narrow it down to like the smallest. All right, how do we get started with the simplest way? Don't put too many tools in there that you're not going to end up using, because then you're probably going to just trip yourself up in the long run.
And then you have to rewrite everything from scratch. I've had to remake my entire game probably 3 times over just because it's like, oh well, this doesn't work the way I wanted it to.
Are there tools that, I mean, and again, this might be a weird question, but like, do Unity or Unreal provide tools that help you get started with Pogs if you wanted to use something like that? Obviously, I think when we were talking earlier, you said there's always these big buttons like, oh, connect to Azure, connect to AWS, right? Because they're probably paying a lot of money to get their stuff right in the game. But do Unity or Unreal provide the same tools for player owned?
Yeah, they absolutely do, and it is not as obvious as maybe Unity's multiplayer. Unity's multiplayer is another version of essentially Azure or something like that. That is cloud server hosting. Unity has a built-in one called Multiplay, which because it is by Unity is even more obvious to go along with launching something multiplayer. Buttons are huge. Says, "Would you like it to be multiplayer now?" You say, "Yes, please," and then you press the button. But there are a lot of options that say like make a headless server now, make a dedicated server. There isn't a lot of education around it, but listening to podcasts like these, listening to words that I said like headless, dedicated, things like that will navigate you in the right direction through menus. And being able to look that up through documentation is more than enough to kind of get you there.
When we spoke last time, you're throwing around tools like Multicraft and Pragma. How do those kind of fit into this? What, I don't know if you can do like a TLDR on what those tools actually do.
Yeah. So last time we sort of talked about was a little bit more on our side of the Pogs industry, and those tools that are a little bit separated from each other. So I'll break down what they are, and I can do a TLDR on it. Multicraft in general is just one of the tools that a lot of us server hosts use to provide a panel for everyone in the industry. Um, and it was recently acquired by Nitrado. Um, and there's a lot going on there, but that is the case. And Pragma in specific is a interesting company who is allowing different developers to actually use their services to not be locked into a single AWS option. So um, most of the time, when you choose a cloud server option, when you're choosing multiplayer, they'll ask you, okay, well, you need to stick with us for a year, you need to stick with us for 3 years, but then you get a cheaper deal. Pragma will say, okay, well, if you come with us, we've made deals with everybody, and you can swap freely between all of them.
Interesting. So making switching easy for no matter what tools or systems you pick in the long run.
I'm pretty sure.
That's fair. Yeah. James does not work for Pragma, so we are not taking
Yeah,
anything he says to.
I think.
As a fan of the industry and someone that wants to eventually speak at E3, and we met at Gamescom. Um, what are the different conferences you've been to, and I guess which one is most memorable for you?
Yeah. I've been to a lot of conferences now with Shockbyte, and it's been a blessing to be able to do so. I've Gaming conventions in general is something that I've been doing my entire life. That's basically how I got into gaming. Um, I've been to ones all around Florida, basically nearly all of them in the state. Um, but Ones that I've kind of been to outside of that are like Gamescom, Cologne. I've been to Dice. I've been to GDC, um, and then I've been to like Holiday Matsuri in Florida. And There are a couple more that are currently planned. Like I'll be going to Tokyo Game Show at the end of the month.
Nice.
Yeah, and we're looking at other potential ones too, which is really exciting. Um, but I think the most memorable one so far has been Dice. Dice was absolutely amazing. I got to shake hands with some absolutely miraculous people in the industry that I could never have expected to have done so with. Um, and the award show to finally see Baldur's Gate win one of everything was great.
I can imagine. Um, Again, you and I have kind of not so clear paths on how we got into gaming, but we are both here and we are both thrilled. If you were to speak to someone that's maybe in university right now or high school and they want to get into this industry, are there any tips or tricks that you would share, just stories you would tell on how you did it, or tips? Yeah.
Yeah, I host panels about this all the time at nearly every convention I attend because I'm so passionate about this kind of thing. Um, Very genuinely, what you need to be doing to get into the industry, I think, is just do things that you enjoy and don't. It doesn't matter if you're paid, and show that you want to be doing it. So if you like making games, like you have a game in mind, it doesn't matter if you don't have development experience. There are ways to do it. Pirate Software, the content creator, does this all the time. He says, I don't care. Go make a game. Stop making excuses. Go make a game. Everyone can do it. It's not hard. There are tons of different ways to do it. I made it on Construct, which is like baby coding. It's super available for everybody. Um, you can go do conventions where they need volunteers for things. You can go do online QA testing for games where you get to literally try games. You join game communities and be their community moderators. These are all real experience that you actually can write on your resume as genuine work experience that when people see on your resume will take as not only is it something you did that was real, but it shows a passion for the industry, which is 10 times more than someone who just wants money. And when HR sees this, or whoever's team you're going to be transferring into at that company sees this, they're going to see that passion. They're going to care.
I love it. Just do it. And we've heard that a few times now. It's like, you know what? With YouTube, with Unity, with Godot, with Unreal, there's documentation, there's videos, there's tutorials out there. Like, do it. And where was I reading? I was reading something the other day where someone said, you know, the best thing for your resume is build your own thing, build a game, right? If you work on a game, that's fine. People see that, like, oh, you worked on Call of Duty, you worked on this game. But if you build your own, people see that the passion is there, that you're willing to go out of your way to make something special, and
Yeah.
that it's not just, hey, I am an artist or I'm a sound person. I built this entire thing. And I think, again, with the tools out there, it's silly for you just to be waiting for something when you can go get it.
Yeah, that's you were so right. And building out your brand and spending actual time doing something that is yours and owning it shows that you care.
In your own personal growth within, say, the last 10 years, right? If you were to look back at yourself 10 years ago, what would surprise you about yourself?
I think that this is going to sound a little weird, but I think that I find myself to be luckier than I ever imagined. Um, um, I, I I think that I find myself falling into a lot of very fortunate situations, um, and while I do work very hard for all of them, um, it's really incredible to be able to, once you're in the industry, and you're working really hard and you show that effort and you show that care, uh, to see other people recognize you for that effort you're putting in, and to be able to talk to people like you, to just be able to immediately come up to you and to be able to talk to you and have that one-to-one bond, like, hey, gaming, oh, that's so cool, and we have that same story getting in. It's like, wow, this person's so cool. So the industry is amazing, and that's something that I just can't. Uh, I never thought would be this way.
I love how you said that. You said fall into fortunate positions, and I don't necessarily think that's the case. I mean, you're putting yourself out there. You're going to these conferences. You're networking. You're talking to everyone. I mean, it does feel like luck, and I get it, but luck isn't really a thing. Like you're setting yourself up. You're meeting the right people, and it's awesome. It's something that surprised me about myself. Like if I looked at myself 10 years ago, I was an introvert. I was quiet. Then I got into this industry. I'm like, I'm gonna just start talking to everyone and anyone because it's fascinating. And I think again, we're alike, where it's everything. I just want to learn about this whole thing as much as I can. Talk to as many people, hear their stories, and I think as much as it is falling into fortunate positions, you are setting yourself up for these fortunate positions. So don't discount that part of yourself. I don't know
You're
the right way to word that.
you're right. No, you're right. You're right.
I think, James, I think that's all I have for you today. I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about or anything you want to share with our audience.
I don't think so, but I don't think that you ever answered what you ate for breakfast.
What I ate for breakfast today was a cup of coffee. I think that might just be it. I don't know if I had breakfast yet, like you, but I'm not going to have Lucky Charms. My son ate all of them, so I don't have any left.
You didn't eat a cup of coffee. You drank a cup of coffee.
I know that's breakfast though.
Oh,
All I need is caffeine for the morning, and I'm good to go.
that's fair. That's fair.
James, it's been awesome having you here. You're with Shockbyte. We will share all the information for Shockbyte on our Player Engaged podcast. James, we'll have your LinkedIn and any other URLs you feel like sharing with our audience. Again, before we end today, is there anything else you want to just talk about? Or
If anyone has any questions about anything, whether that's getting into the industry, or that has to do with POGs or multiplayer in general, I am sorely educated on all of these, and I'm more than eager to share this with anyone who's interested. And I will immediately add you back and be happy to chat. So if you have anything, please do add me, and I'm eager to talk to you.
yeah, and it's just a fellow gamer that loves games. So if you want to talk gaming, find James, find anyone in the industry because everyone wants to talk about games here. But James, again, thank you for joining me on a Friday. I hope you enjoy your lunch/breakfast of Lucky Charms,
I'm ready.
and I hope to talk to you again.
Yeah, thanks so much, Greg.
Bye.